think it's this one here. Share. There we go. All right. So this is called increased rack density up to 60%. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. Who wouldn't want to attend that, right? I'll talk about those numbers here in a minute, kind of what we bring to the table. If you are looking to increase rack density, what's the point of all that? I'm sure you already know that anyway. But anyway, so I'm going to get into our product netTerrain here in just a minute, more of a live demo. So I'm this person down here, customer support person, says director. I'm just, I'm here to help with customer support, pre-sales, post-sales, etc. So, anyway, moving on. So we're going to see netTerrain in action in just a second. We got a few polling questions I'm going to throw out there. So this was kind of related to the problem, right? So we got, says racks are expensive. So, which those of you on the call would probably know better than I about how expensive a rack is, not just the physical rack itself, but of course, when we talk about expensive racks, it usually has to do with having to put equipment in the rack, getting more racks in place if you needed them, using what you have efficiently, et cetera, right? So, and this is kind of the math behind that whole 60% number. It says, you're typically allocating a certain amount of power. So maybe 4 kilowatts or something. And this threshold, you can comfortably install, let's say 10 servers. If you're looking at, let's say, manufacturer spec of 400 watts on a server, that'll give you 4,000 watts. So 2U in size, you got a 40U rack. You're basically leaving half the rack empty from a power perspective, right? From a rack utilization perspective, you're pretty much in good shape. You got a whole half a rack left. And anybody that walks by that rack is going to look at it and go, hey, we have all kinds of room to grow, don't we? Well, no, you don't, because unless you're putting in, just the patch panels inside of it, there's not much you can do, right? And that's what kind of this is talking about here. So if you can monitor, let's say real time, maybe not even real time, just be able to grab data periodically and track that information, and certainly power, temperature as well, possibly. You can set up maybe some power policies for the racks. So you can oversubscribe the rack, right, without additional equipment and doing some fancy stuff, or bringing in more power, which is very expensive to do, and so on. So instead of just basing on nameplate where they say, you're going to use 400 watts of power, what's the real power usage, right? So if you're doing, in this example, 250 watts instead of 400, you cap the power at 4K, and then you could add basically more servers. So maybe 16 more servers. So now I'm not only increasing 60% rack density, not just from a power standpoint, but also rack utilization standpoint too. Right now, I'm actually using up all my rack units, which is nice. So anyway, let's jump over to some polling questions. Let me find my Zoom here again. Let's see, poll. Let me launch this. So it says you're currently using any method for documenting your data center. Multiple choice. Are you using Visio, spreadsheets, coworkers, DCIM, homegrown database, right? So, what's out there? What are you using? So it looks like DCIM is the big winner here. Spreadsheets, followed by spreadsheets, coming on fast. Very nice to see. Good stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's usually what we see. Maybe not so much somebody has a DCIM solution already, but they might. But certainly Visio spreadsheets is always a big one, or Visio and spreadsheet kind of thing. So, well, thanks for that. Have another one for you. Biggest headache you'd like to solve? Is it capacity planning, reducing, preventing downtime, untangling cabling? Which this isn't really a cabling webinar, but might be good to just know about. Reduce energy costs. Sorry, I need to launch this so you can actually see what I'm saying. Reduce energy costs and knowing where your assets are. So asset management, which you may already have a tool for that, but I certainly like our tool, of course, I'm biased from the standpoint of asset management, knowing where things are physically located. Capacity planning is a good thing too. So, if how full your cabinets are, so to speak. Certainly a big part of when I talk to customers, I think preventing or reducing downtime is a big thing too. Reducing it from the standpoint of knowing how things are physically connected. It's easier to troubleshoot an issue if you really know your network environment. I mean, if you have a holistic view of, hey, this is my network, this is how it's connected. When something goes out, at least you can go to some documentation and go, okay, well, we know physically how things are connected, what's in the path that might have gone out and so on. So the big winner here was capacity planning, followed by pretty much everything else. I think everybody had a little bit of a mix of everything. Assets was the second sort of thing there. I'll do one more if you don't mind. Do you currently have a DCIM solution? I think you guys, a couple of you already said you did, so very good. We're sort of inside plant, outside plant, DCIM, outside plant, and also sort of EM stuff. So yes, looking to migrate, no. That's all good. So thanks for that. Appreciate the time there. Looks like most of you guys have some sort of solution now, DCIM. Some of you are looking to migrate. I know there's been a few big tools out there, DCIM tools that have been sort of end of lifed. So sort of unfortunate for, the folks that have those tools, but anyway, and then no, don't have anything. So, all right, again, thanks for that. All right, so let's get into my stop share, because I think I was just sharing the slides, I think. So let me go over to netTerrain here. So we're talking about racks. So I'm going to go straight into showing kind of a rack and stack view. This is a sort of a view that we would have in our tool in the netTerrain product. So netTerrain it's a software product. It's cloud-based, or you can host it yourself. You can do on-prem. You either flavor, we kind of, whatever you want to do, we really pretty much support or try to, so this would be kind of an example of, having a bunch of servers where, 18 or so, and if they're all, 1,000 or 500 watts of power, technically that's a lot of power that's being consumed. And it would be nice to be able to sort of understand, if that's really manufacturer spec power, how can we really load this cabinet up and take advantage of perhaps instead of manufacturer spec, actually the real power reading and those types of things. And so there's a few ways to do that. When you look at when you do talk about, capacity, increasing capacity, it's not, oftentimes it can be related to power. Of course, rack utilization is the other big one, right? So if we look at a cabinet, for instance, go over here to my racks and let me just grab some rack. This is how our racks typically looked. It's like you're looking down over top, but if I double click on this guy, I have two containers, so front and back. We have racks, of course, they're just single containers or dual if that's what you're looking for. But, if I grab a device and I drag it in this case, it's a UPS, right? And I rack mount it, and you could do front or back, it doesn't matter. But the point is, when you look at this device, it's got a certain power associated with it. It's 6,000 watts of power it's going to consume, right? Or in this case, another 5,800 watts of power. Well, from a power perspective, you might be already hitting sort of your cap as far as whatever your power number is. So for instance, this is the cabinet. On the left-hand side, it says power 10,000 watts, and the actual consumption is 11,800 watts, right? I'm going now off of a manufacturer spec right now. I'll talk about real sort of power monitoring in a second. You could also do weight. But if I look at this from the perspective of, I want to see this rack by rack, instead of rack utilization by power utilization, this rack turns red. And there's a reason for it, because in our opinion right now, we're basically overutilized. We're like, hey, we're exceeding the threshold that we've set. Well, what do? Well, instead of using manufacturer spec, or if you want to change the numbers, I could come in here and just manually say, I'm going to change this. But of course, power is one of those things that constantly can be changing on device. If you add another card, it's going to consume more power, or if it's just not a heavy workload machine, probably not going to be consume as much power as it could possibly if you're, running it full capacity of that particular device, right? So the point of all this is, how do we help ourselves from the standpoint of utilization, tracking capacities, and those types of things? Well, documentation is really kind of the best way to go in some way. Now, documentation might be, I'm going to use an Excel spreadsheet, which in your case, it might be perfectly fine. That's great. But when you do start to get down to the point where, hey, I need to not only just know manufacturer spec or, hey, where something's located, right? Because we can certainly show visually where a particular device is rack mounted. And I've been navigating down through my hierarchy here, by the way, to kind of show it exactly where it is physically located. But, if I look at these devices, sorry about that, I hit my mouse too many times. If I select one of these devices on the left-hand side, you'll see it's got that, sort of peak power or whatever. But I also have a power number down here, and that's 291. So that's more of a real time, real value that I'm getting, where I'm actually tracking at the device level, and I'm saying, hey, give me a data value, give me the power read from this thing on a regular basis. So more real-time power, right? So maybe every 5 minutes, give me a read I think you go down to 30 seconds if you wanted to, but give me something that's closer to reality versus what it might max out to be, or what the max is, or the manufacturer power is, right? So that's what this is kind of all about. So, managing racks and capacity, certain from a power perspective, how do we do that in our best way? I mean, when you're talking about a rack utilization, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you put things in position into the cabinet, right? You know where it is, how many rack units you have left. You run reports, how many rack units you have. But you really need to start comparing that to power, because, yeah, great, this rack, I've got tons of room left, but if I don't have power room, so to speak, then what's the point? I can't put anything in here. As far as I'm concerned, this is all dead space, right? So when the boss is asking, hey, why can't we put something in here? You can go, well, because we don't have enough power for it. But maybe you do have enough power for it, because if you're doing more real-time power monitoring of devices, then I can get into actually doing that. So how do we do that? And what are some of the tools that you can take advantage of? Well, first and foremost, we have a tool called the collector, where if I want to just grab a value periodically and say, hey, give me the last power read from this OID value for power, et cetera. Let me see that. Or maybe it's temperature or some other value. Pretty straightforward to do and set up. You install this collector and it goes out and does that discovery. There's another more advanced kind of way of doing this as well, and I'm going to show you that. But on the left-hand side, you can do other things too when you do start to take advantage of kind of getting these data reads on a regular basis. So for instance, on the left-hand side, I have power. I could put in something like a cost, right? And then what happens is it starts to do a calculate. So now I'm getting a cost per hour for this thing. How much is it to actually run this device per hour, right? Now I know, it's 3 cents or 10 cents or whatever it happens to be. And maybe I roll that up so I can see the total rack cost per hour. Like, oh, only $2 an hour to run. Yeah. Well, when it's a day and you're talking about, 24 hours, now it starts to cost you $50 a day. Now that's real money every day you're spending on power, right? So now I can start to formulate, hey, not only do I know what my true power readings are, if I can add more power, but what is it really costing me to run these devices in this rack as well? It gives you, you start to think in terms of, hey, not only can I track these, but maybe get that rack density back up, but also maybe it gives me incentive to go out and find these devices that aren't really being used anymore, making sure they get turned off. And so I'm not really wasting money on those things. But so anyway, how do I get the data feed? So again, we have our collector tool that you can take advantage of and get data on a regular basis. But we also have another tool. I'm going to stop my share here for a second, sorry. And I'm going to switch over to the EM. So now the EM is nice because this is going to let you go out and do a discovery. So I can go to my devices and discovery, add a discovery task, come in here and choose a version of discovery protocol, IPMI, SNMP, et cetera. SNMP, most people are familiar with, right? That's been around forever. That allows me to grab data from a device, focus in on OID and bring that value or data back. There's also IPMI, and that's more around typically servers. So iDRAC, iLoad, those types of things. That's IPMI protocol. So you can interact with that controller. And that's really powerful too, because it allows you to actually control power. I can set thresholds and other things. I can say, this device, I don't want it to exceed 300 watts of power. Again, going back to sort of density, if I can sort of bottle cap my servers and say, hey, they shouldn't exceed this. Now, of course, in some cases you can't do that because you have, workloads and stuff where it might have to peak up and do other things. And there's some other tools kind of around that too. But if you can cap it, or if you just have to cap it, right? Because in some cases you're out of power at some place and you're like, hey, I have to, bottle cap this stuff and not exceed it. So there's other sort of protocols you can take advantage of as well, right? So anyway, this is just going out and done some discoveries. But what does that ultimately get to? What does that lead to? Well, if it's something like a server, it can lead to me getting information from the server itself, some detailed information, right? Not just the IP and just sort of the basics, but other things too, like seeing temperatures, various temperatures, because a lot of servers have a lot of temperature sensors sort of built onto the server, into the server, the motherboard, and things like that, that you can read data from. Errors, other things like health statuses, battery fan checks, and things like that. But getting to the sort of the heart of the matter, as far as what we've been talking about, is power. You can see that here down where it says power and temperature in that little area down here, right? So I can come down here and start to look at, oh, here's power over time. This is actually for the last hour, right? So I can put my mouse on any of these and actually see the values. So I can hover and see, what the numbers were for those sort of reads, right? So highest power consumption, IT equipment power, and then the lowest power consumption, right? So if I want to, I can change this and say, well, what's this look like for a week or a month or 3 months or a year, right? Well, I haven't had it on that long, but you can see this, you're starting to have a higher consumption rate for that particular server. So maybe something changed on it, higher load, whatever it happens to be, right? So, and here you actually see that over time. So in the other tool, the netTerrain tool, I'm showing you kind of the last data read, but here I'm going to show you the data reads over time, which is nice. But now I can start to get more real-time values, right? And so now I know which ones are really consuming at what power level, right? I can mix in temperature too. So if I want to see temperature for inlets and outlets and so on, I can take advantage of that as well, because that sort of leads into the conversation too. Because obviously you have to cool where all these racks are and servers are if you start to use too much power, because even if you do have the ability to start using more power, it leads to heat. Of course, you have to cool. If you can't cool, then you're probably not going to be able to run these things hotter or with more power output. This tool is nice because you can also do rollback, where I can click on the rack and actually see the rack power consumption as a whole. And that data can be fed down to the rack level detail as well, if I want or need it to into netTerrain. So now this is where we kind of get into, the real-time power over time monitoring of the data center, wiring closet, whatever it happens to be, and getting a lot of details. I can also get into looking at low utilization servers. What's the % utilization of a server? And then if I need to, I can go and actually look at that server and realize, I'm consuming a lot of power for basically when it's for something that's not really doing any work, right? So it's one of those things that, again, you can really take advantage of. and start to weed out servers and equipment that are no longer being used, right? Or don't need to be used. So that in turn is going to save you money because you're back to sort of that whole power paradigm, which is good. Now you can set up alarms and thresholds. And again, I mentioned you could set up, bottle cap, top level, hey, don't consume more power than X for this device, or even for the rack as a whole, you can do that as well, which is kind of nice. So let me go back to this view. So you start to be able to feed data into this level, this view, get real-time, more power readings, and then be able to do more with your cabinets, right? Better utilization, better understanding of kind of where you are with respect to your devices and your rack utilization capacity, and hopefully start to even save money from the standpoint of, hey, let's get rid of things we don't need. Let's not worry about having to add power and go that expense, and so on. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. Run out of time. Well, got a little bit of time left. If there's any questions, please go ahead and throw them up there in the Q&A. I'll bring up some other things too. So when you are, as I mentioned, for us, this is sort of the rack, more like a data center view here, right? You've got multiple cabinets. These are different colors because, again, I go back to, I'm looking at this by rack utilization, but if I wanted to look at it by power, I could click on that and then it'll change the appearance. So I have a lot of cabinets that are pretty much over limit on, red, orange is kind of, lesser, and then I got my green. I have a sort of a values up here as far as percent utilization over here. But again, it gives you an idea of what you can do and just some thoughts, around how you might better manage those racks and take, hopefully increase the rack density in some way, either from power or rack utilization. Maybe it could be helpful from that standpoint. So anyway, I don't see any questions up there. I didn't have anything else to talk about. I think I covered what we really wanted to kind of hit on. If you guys have questions, want to try things out, I guess reach out to us. I should reshare my PowerPoint for a second. Sorry, just so you guys can see. Here we go. So I would reach out to Fred Young down here at the bottom. fred.young@graphicalnetworks.com. If you have questions, you want to see a fuller demo, you have very specific questions, you want to try out netTerrain, just let us know. Happy to help out and answer any questions, see if we might be the right fit for what it is you're looking for. So thanks everybody, really appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.